Yes, I live in Davis. I don't know if my home is a net gain or a net loss to the city. If it's a net loss, I apologize very much for continuing to live in it. But it's only 12 years old, so it's probably right on the cusp. Anyway, I have, no worries, Sarah. I have probably more slides than I'm supposed to have. I wanted to start by, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. And give you a little bit of background on myself. I've been CEO at SARTA for 4 years now. I was previously at UC Davis in a couple of different departments, but working consistently with startup companies that were coming out of the campus. And that was about 6 years, from early 2002 to about 2008. Got a couple of SARTA board members sitting down there at that end of the table. Both Dushyant and Mike are members of the SARTA board. So what I wanted to do, thank you, is start with a little bit of kind of big picture context about the Next Economy regional prosperity plan that's in place in the region and some of the priorities that it sets. If you could jump to the next slide, please, Sarah. Is that a clicker? Yes. Clicker. So just in terms of context, I'm really not going to, there's 2 slides on this and I'm not going to belabor them, but Next Economy has set a region-wide vision across a 6-county region of Sacramento, broadly defined, to drive ourselves collectively to become a sought-after place for business growth, investment, and, I love the next part, entrepreneurship. To become a desirable place for young professionals and to really grow and sustain a diverse economy renowned for activity in core business clusters and driven significantly by export activity. The City of Davis, along with 19 other cities in our region, has endorsed, through the City Council, has endorsed the Next Economy Plan, and 5 of the 6 counties in the region have done so as well. Those that have not, it's not that it came before them and was not successful, just has not come on the agendas of those entities at this point in time. A little bit more context about Next Economy. It has identified 5 goals for regional joint action, and much of what we do at SARTA and much of almost everything that I'm going to talk about tonight falls very solidly under that number 1 heading of fostering a strong innovation environment. We have an asset, you have an asset, I can say we as a resident. I will say you as for my professional capacity, but Davis has an asset that is unique in this region, and that asset is naturally the university that sits just down that way a little bit. And it really differentiates this community very significantly from others, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity to capitalize on it more effectively than perhaps has been able to be done in the past. So that's context. Now I'm going to move to definitions, because apparently I was being really super analytical earlier today and felt the need to define things. So what does tech sector mean? It does not just mean app developers, software developers, or IT companies. SARTA, when I stand up and do our elevator pitch, I define tech as being a very broad definition that encompasses any company that has intellectual property at the core of its competitive advantage in the marketplace. And then somebody always says, does that include people who write books, because those are copyrighted? So I found this alternative definition, which was published by an actual authority, the Kauffman Foundation for Entrepreneurship, earlier this year, that defines the tech sector as a cluster, a group of companies or industries that have very high shares of employees in the STEM fields of science, technology, engineering, and math. So I think I'm just going to sort of unilaterally adopt that going forward, and that'll get rid of the whole authorship question that I get. And so that's what I generally talk about when I speak on behalf of SARTA. It includes, and I listed a whole laundry list of little industry sectors down there. It includes all of those, software, app, IT, computer, electronics, hardware, clean tech, med tech, bioscience, life science, ag, and or food tech. The list goes on. Generally speaking, we at SARTA think very broadly about all of those companies because they share a number of characteristics. And I want to highlight what some of those characteristics are that make them similar to each other in many ways and also distinct from other small businesses, because frankly a lot of the companies we start with start small. Where else are you going to start? But then they grow quickly. And as they grow, they have very unique and distinguishing characteristics based on different from other small businesses. We find that the tech sector companies we work with are usually highly scalable. They're often product-based rather than service-based. If they need initial outside funding from investors or in order to invest in the business to get it off the ground, that is usually, but not always, an equity investment rather than debt. Some of these companies are very difficult to lend to, having not much in the way of assets to collateralize from the banking perspective. The other point that I want to make is that these companies have, generally speaking, highly specialized human staffing needs, and that those needs can drive kind of a cluster-based behavior among the companies themselves, because they want to be located where there is an employee base that they can employ. It's hard enough to get a business off the ground and growing significantly without having to also wholesale create your employee base. And so you see a lot of tech clusters that emerge, and they emerge for a range of different reasons, different asset-based reasons, but one of the significant assets that we hear CEOs of tech companies talk about all the time are human assets and the significant need they have for very specialized skill sets. And the other thing I'd like to say about those specialized human needs is that the jobs that these companies create are often knowledge-based, well-paid, and they attract highly educated employees to them. And I think in many respects, a lot of those characteristics are a match for the type of folks that our university partner is producing every year in terms of their graduates. So Sarah encouraged me to show you some maps. So I am showing you some maps. SARTA, a couple of years ago, started mapping the tech sector in the region. And again, this is not all just the IT companies. You see the different colored dots, and they actually represent different tech sectors. I cleverly left the key off the map, so you can just guess. But there's a key, and it is on the website. And it is an interactive Google map, which is why it's not necessarily the most beautiful thing to show on a PowerPoint slide. But there are 520 tech companies across the 6-county region, actually the 9-county region that we look at. That's at our latest guess, our latest work. We want this map to be comprehensive, and we know it whenever it will be, because there will always be companies that we're not aware of. We build this map bottoms up from working with partners and getting access to the information they have about companies, not top-down, downloading it from some database in the sky, because those are databases in the sky often miss some of the very small emerging companies that are the very ones we want to be sure that we capture. So we want this to be as comprehensive as possible. The thing I always say when I show this map is if you go to the website and there's a company that you think ought to be on there that's not in there, please tell us. It's the only way we'll know to add it. It was not deliberate. It was not an insult in any way. Davis specifically has more tech companies than any other city in the region other than one, which I think is a pretty decent company to be keeping, because the other city that has more is the city of Sacramento. You may have heard of it. It's a little bit over there, and it's slightly larger. I think the total in Davis, well, I don't think, the total in companies in Davis is 58 or 59, I can't remember from the graph. And I think the density of tech companies here really points to some of the unique features of our community and the fact of the close physical relationship to UC Davis. I want to do a little bit more graph-based stuff. This looks shockingly like one of Rob's pie charts, except it's not about where money comes from or goes, but it's about some of the sectors of tech companies that we see here in the city of Davis. And it's there's a lot of med tech and there's a lot of clean tech, but there's also a good distribution of a whole range of other sectors as well. And I think it's a fabulous basis on which to build.
What would that look like if you adjusted it for employees?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. What would that look like if you adjusted it for full-time equivalents as opposed to a company?
That would presume that we have reliable information about full-time equivalent employees that we would be permitted to publish. Because, as I said before, we generate this list from the bottoms up, and rather than from top-down reporting, which is often dated and not accurate. So while there is some data that we have about employee headcount, I can't say we have reliable know that I, off the top of my head, would say whether I think Davis is significantly an outlier, either much smaller companies or much larger than the region. Many of the, I mean, if you go to that map of, that was it, of everybody in the region, I mean, that's 520 tech companies, many of them very small, spread across, you know, a very large geographic region. And they can be difficult to kind of see and to keep in top of mind as in fact being here in the region. One of the challenges that we see and that we try to work on at SARTA is to raise the profile of the tech sector in the region generally, because there's a lot of folks doing a lot of really interesting work, but often, you know, heads down, working hard, not necessarily that visible to the greater community.
And your definition of very small?
Oh, 20 or fewer. Not an SBA definition of fewer than 500 or something like that. Yes.
Meg, I'd like to say something about the average salary point that you're getting to. As a banker, I do see a lot of the financials of these companies. And I generally will see the very, very small companies, and they're bootstrapping, and those guys are just hardly getting there. But, you know, there's no doubt that the annual income of employees of tech companies is significantly higher than any other sector, I think. At least that's been my observation through a review of a lot of financial statements. So.
That's a good point. And, you know, the vision, so this is reality today. You know, there's a vision that I could have come up with, which is, you know, we see 500 companies today. Think of 5 years from now as 750. Think of 25 headquartered companies with 5 or 6 IPOs. Thankfully, Davis has already contributed one of those IPOs, so we can check that off the list. Think of $750 million of capital being invested in regional tech companies between now and the next 5 years. All of those numbers would be material growth from what we see today. And both in terms of the numbers of companies, the capital invested, and the average size of the employee base that's here. So, you know, we definitely have a place where kind of we at the SARTA board level want to focus our work to drive toward that future. But tonight I just wanted to focus on where we are right now.
Great, thank you.